Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are revisiting a film that I reviewed in the infancy of my channel, Son of the Mask. If you haven't watched my review of it yet, I recommend checking it out for more context before watching this video, and have linked it in the description. Without further ado, on with the review. I was originally inspired to make this video by a comment that I received at the end of last year on my original video about Son of the Mask. I had never heard of the film Heckler before this, so I thought it would be very interesting to revisit the notorious film with a fresh outlook after trying to see what the lead actor, at least, was trying to achieve. Son of the Mask is an awful movie, there's no doubt about that. Made 11 years too late after the original Mask came out, the story is contrived and has nothing to do with the original plot or characters. The humour doesn't land, the musical segments aren't fitting, and the effects are terrifying. I'm not here to dispute the quality of that dumpster fire. However, I think that at least discussing the response from the other side is overdue. And what better time is it than just over a year after my original review came out? Jamie Kennedy also released videos discussing the backlash around Son of the Mask, which I will be discussing later on in this video also. The name of the production company that opens this film is certainly of a certain maturity level, but one could argue that it is childishly humorous, and it did get a chuckle out of me, so I guess that says everything about my character. This is shortly followed by a definition of the word heckler, before we actually get into the documentary. This framing device is very lazy, and has been used a million times, even in films that I've reviewed previously. Several people being interviewed describe what they think a heckler is, and give their brief thoughts on hecklers. Some of these people include comedians Mike White and Bobby Slayton. We also get some clips including Jamie Kennedy bombing a joke about British pornography, as an audience member doesn't take it too well.
English porno, I'll tell you what, it didn't work because the guy was too polite. I'm not kidding, the guy was with the girl and he's like this, he's like, I say. The only person that talks.
No other English person talks like that. It's far too posh. English people don't really talk like that.
Have you been fucked by all of England, or?
My response to this would be, 1. Stereotypes, while can be funny if done well, are one of the lowest forms of insult comedy. Can't you come up with something better? 2. On the other hand, his response was kinda funny, and it's an extremely common joke that Americans make, because we do sound posh to them. I assume because of our mainstream media. Hell, those people sound posh to me. They then show an interview with James Masada, the founder of the Laugh Factory, followed by this terrible animation.
And comic could immediately think or have a line in his head that how I'll come back to him to shut him up.
Why the fuck did you come out of the house? What, was the bowling alley closed?
Fucking hell, we're 3 minutes into the documentary and we're already getting this shit. Are you taking the piss, man? The documentary just kinda goes on with comedians complaining about hecklers, and comedy with clips from Jamie Kennedy's stand-up routines, where he gets heckled or booed off stage. Jamie Kennedy also interviews Carrot Top, who I'm not really too familiar with outside of ginger people being compared to him. I know who he is and that he's supposed to be a comedian or some kind of funny guy. I tried to do a bit of research on him, and apparently he used to host Cartoon Network and has been in a lot of films, but I guess that I'm a bit too young to understand the point of this or quite grasp the attempted gravity of this interview. If any of you have anything to say about this in the comments, please enlighten me. The documentary degenerates into comparing film critics to hecklers, and some of the people being interviewed start making comments that I really can't agree with.
People have spent sometimes years and man hours and time and effort to put this thing to try to make it as best they can, and then this one person in just like, you know, in 3 paragraphs totally destroys you and says, you know, you are worthless, you shouldn't even be alive, your family should be destroyed. I mean, it's like they get so vindictive.
I do think critics have changed from when I first was aware of them. They seem to earlier have a sense of humility. I think, like in so many places in society, there's just too much of their ego.
I'm sorry, but if you're going to create something and put it out there, you have to be willing to accept that not everyone is going to like it, no matter how hard you worked on it. If you're not prepared for that, keep it private. The people go into discussing online reviewers, and there's this segment with Deep Roy which is probably staged, but it's absolutely hilarious.
What was the last movie you did? Son of the Shit?
Yeah, what about it?
What was it? The reviews? They were great reviews? What was the reviews? 4%? 4%? 4?
Yeah.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. 86%. Big Fish. 83%. Don't be such a bitch, can I?
They begin discussing the website amiannoying.com, and while some of the jokes about people featured on the website are in poor taste, again, they're meant to be edgy jokes. They even say in the documentary that the people writing these shockingly harsh reviews and making these websites are doing it for clicks. It's always been the nature of the internet. Kennedy then interviews Josh Bell, a film critic from Las Vegas Weekly, and questions him about the article he wrote on Malibu's Most Wanted, a 2003 comedy film starring Kennedy.
It starts with Jamie Kennedy needs to be stopped. But Kennedy has somehow mutated into an actual star.
I have nothing against you as a person. I don't know you.
You didn't say Jamie Kennedy's film needs to be stopped. You say Jamie Kennedy needs to be stopped. How can that not be anything but personal?
It's referring to your career.
Do you think that I shouldn't have a career?
It's hard to say.
I think Bell responds pretty reasonably to Kennedy's questions. While Kennedy is being addressed by name, he is the face of his characters. As an actor, he should separate himself from his public appearance as Jamie Kennedy, from how he views himself as Jamie Kennedy. Kennedy also insults Bell and implies that he's just a nerd, which shows the amount of maturity he had at the time of this being made, if this wasn't staged.
You said you wanted to walk out of Son of the Mask.
Yes.
You've never walked out of a movie before? In your whole existence?
No.
My movie was trying to break new boundaries. It was trying
What
to have
were those
a
boundaries?
baby that had superpowers that could, like, you know, pick up people and throw them.
Yes.
Okay, Kennedy. Let's be nice and say you were trying to break new boundaries. Whatever you were trying to achieve was not executed in the final product, which is why so many people hated Son of the Mask. Not to mention, you are making a sequel to a film that was considered a classic, even in 2005. Making a good film is hard enough as it is. You're going to have a hard time topping that already, and of course people are going to compare the two. The film was trying to break new boundaries, and it failed to do so.
And he read the review from Siskel and Ebert at the table, popped up and he said, "Screw it. I don't care, man. I made some great comedy decisions." And what's amazing about that review is that it's the first movie that Siskel and Ebert actually went back and took back what they said about it.
See, good for Jim Carrey. His work is liked for the most part for a reason. I would argue that it's always good to think critically of what you create, as long as you're not overly harsh with yourself, but I guess that's what Siskel and Ebert clearly did. German film director Uwe Boll also gets featured in this documentary. I received some comments a long time ago asking me to discuss his films, which I've clearly never gotten around to doing, unfortunately. He's known for making very loose, poor quality adaptations of video games, like House of the Dead and Blood Rain, and challenging his critics to boxing matches, earning him the nickname the Raging Bull. The documentary seems to frame him as some kind of champion of filmmakers, as it shows clips of him beating his opponents interspersed with clips of some of his critics, well, criticizing him. This should not be treated as a good thing. It's horrible. It shows the poor guy throwing up afterwards. I don't know who he is or what he said, but he certainly didn't deserve that for not liking the guy's films, even if he did agree to box him. I've seen House of the Dead. It does suck. The documentary ends with Kennedy burning articles criticizing him, with two fuller-figured women, and this guy making some comments on it, which I thought was pretty funny.
Well, I guess it's really nice that the people who make a lot of money for fucking around in front of a camera get an opportunity to really complain about the people who have to sit through the stuff that they make. And of course, it's always nice to have big fat ladies at the end of your movie.
Jamie Kennedy opens part 1 describing some of the most embarrassing moments of his career, and how he has realized that everything he says and does has had an effect on him.
I started thinking about it, and they all have made an impact in their own way. As much as people have liked something I have done, they might have equally hated something I have done.
It's good that he has at least realized this, but I think he really should have considered this before he became an actor. This even applies to one's personal life in a less extreme manner most of the time. Everything you say and do will matter later on. Okay. The fact that he had the balls to title part 1 this is admirable. It is one of the most memorable scenes in the film after all. Kennedy describes how he first got involved with Son of the Mask, that being that while Malibu's Most Wanted was being made, he offered Warner Bros. A few scripts that ended up never going to production, showing that we're off to a great start here. Kennedy's manager brought the Son of the Mask idea to him, as Jim Carrey didn't want to do it, and half of his team were pushing for him to do it, and half were really against it. This caused a lot of flip-flopping until he eventually decided to do it, with apparent promises of wealth and success.
I went to Jimmy Kimmel, and I was doing Jimmy Kimmel, and one night in the green room, I was there, and a very big executive from New Line came and said, "So I heard you said no to the movie." And I said, "Kinda, yeah. I think I'm not gonna do it." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Well, we really want you." And I said, "And I know, and I'm so flattered, and I don't think I can do it. I think there's, I don't know, it's just too much, and everyone's saying all this stuff." And he said, "Well, I think there's probably more money there." I was like, "Okay. I think that's cool, but, tape Jimmy Kimmel." The next day I wake up, my manager called me and they go, yeah, New Line just doubled their offer. I go, "The guy said there's more money there." And they go, "Yeah, there's double the money."
Part 2 is essentially Kennedy explaining that it was never his intention to try and be Jim Carrey, which I think is true, and he describes a nice interaction between the two of them. I said earlier though, that of course there are going to be comparisons, as they're the two leads, which Kennedy does address, but just because you do something different doesn't mean it's going to be good.
So just imagine this as a romantic comedy, and the trials and tribulations of what it's like to be a new father. And there's a lot of comedy in that with Mr. Mom, a legendary comedy, 3 Men and a Baby, these different type of movies where a guy is fish out of water with a new kid.
The focus of the Mask story, even in the comics, was always the classic mask. The original idea for the story is clearly based on Jekyll and Hyde. That is the point of the franchise at minimum. It's good that the people involved didn't want to repeat the same movie, because that would have been equally as bad. But what you did produce just isn't what the fans wanted to see, and they made that clear. Part 3 is more about the filming and general production of Son of the Mask, which definitely is interesting, but isn't relevant to the topic of the video. I have linked all of these videos in the description, and highly recommend you all check them out. I also rewatched my own Son of the Mask review before creating this video, and I pretty much stand by everything I said in it, although my editing and general production quality was pretty shoddy. Here's the thing about criticism. No matter how rude or unconstructive something someone says to you seems, there is always something to learn from it. My Son of the Mask review was the 4th video on my channel, and I was attempting to be more funny and entertaining through my commentary, as expressing myself through my videos has always been more of a struggle as I naturally have quite a monotone voice, which can make it seem like I'm being rude or don't have passion about what I'm talking about, which is not my intention at all. I was also trying to escape the YouTube copyright system while having quite poor quality equipment and editing software, and not really having many assets ready. I also wasn't a very experienced video editor in terms of commentary, all of this leading to things like the heavy filter and general poor quality of my videos from that time period. My point is, even critics can be worthy of criticism and should be willing to embrace things that they do wrong so they can learn and grow from them. As small of a channel as I am, I have received a couple of what some would describe as hate comments, but I believe I should respond to these appropriately, either correcting what they're mistaken about or swallowing my pride and taking an L. Another thing to note is, while humour is subjective and I would say I didn't find a lot of the jokes the critics made in this documentary funny, they're doing this kind of thing to entertain their audience as well. While I do try to include genuine criticism in my videos, I do make jabs at the subject's expense at times. I've even done it in this video. It's meant to be amusing for my audience, and it's even better and you come across as likeable and self-aware if you can laugh at yourself. I feel a bit sorry for Jamie Kennedy. While most of his films that I've seen haven't really been very good, even with minor roles like in Romeo plus Juliet, I don't think he's a horrible actor. I think he was just a bit naive going into things, so didn't really know how to respond properly when it all came crashing down. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.
Nothing like a polo to ease my mind. With polos by my side, I'll always shine. The blue and green ones are my favorite kind, but I'll eat the colored ones from time to time. Cause polos is life, 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 polos is life. Sleep all night and then polos is life.